Alhamdulillah, countless gratitude to Allah, the Lord of all the creations, that He has bestowed upon us this ability and opportunity to spend this time in His remembrance. Innumerable peace and blessings be upon our beloved Prophet, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because of whom Allah's mercy is upon us. My dear respected audience, Allah says in Quran, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولقد آتينا موسى الكتاب وقفينا من بعده بالرسل وآتينا عيسى ابن مريم البينات وأيدناه بروح القدس أفكلما جاءكم رسول بما لا تهوى أنفسكم استكبرتم ففريقا كذبتم وفريقا تقتلون. And verily we gave Moses the book, Torah, and strengthened his message with other messengers after him. We gave Jesus, son of Mary, clear signs and helped him with the Holy Spirit. However, whenever a messenger brought to you that was not in accordance with your desires, you showed arrogance towards them, and some of them you called impostors, and some you killed. Allah is once again addressing the Israelites in this verse. And one may wonder why such a big portion of Quran is dedicated to telling about the situation, the incidents, the transgressions of the Israelites. The reason is that at the time of Rasulullah, it was the Israelites who were settled around Medina. They called themselves the custodians of the book, people of the book, and thought of themselves to be on the right path. They had the book. They were, in their belief, following their messengers. They were on the right path. They used to intimidate the pagans by announcing the arrival of a final messenger of Allah, after which they would exact out their toll from them. Being immediate neighbors of Medina, most of Rasulullah's time was spent in dealing with their treacheries and their conspiracy. Also, most of the surviving monotheist belief in one God that existed at that time and those existed today even, those have their roots in the Israelites. Both the Jews and Christians, other than Islam, there are only three religions that preach and practice oneness of God. And two of them, a vast majority, they have roots in Israelites. So it is because of this that a vast portion of Quran is dedicated to reject and correct the beliefs of the Israelites of that time and today, so that the Israelites and others can benefit from it and correct their course. In this verse, Allah describes the story once again and reminding them that it is not the first time that they are rejecting both the message and the messenger of Allah. It has been their routine and habit to do so. They are reminded again that they dubbed many messengers of Allah as impostors, and many they killed simply because the message that was brought to them did not align very well with their own desires and wishes. They are being reminded that they mistreated the messengers like Musa alayhi salam, Hazrat Isa alayhi. They submitted to them first, and then they transgressed whenever they got a chance to do so. Even conspired with. Allah is telling them that through Hazrat Musa alayhi salam, they were given the majestic word of Allah in the form of Torah. First Testament, they call it. It contained undeniable signs from Allah, but they still went against it, even though Allah kept on sending them messengers after messengers just to keep them on the straight path. It is narrated that around about 4,000 prophets and messengers were sent to the Israelites. And there was, the basis was always Torah. So Dawud alayhi salam brought Psalms, Zabur, Isa alayhi salam brought Injil, but the Sharia was of the Musa alayhi salam. There was no Sharia that came to the Israelites after Hazrat Musa alayhi salam. And when Hazrat Musa alayhi salam was given Torah, it was not revealed to him in pieces like Quran. The whole book was sent all at once. And it was such magnanimous word of Allah, such was its magnanimity that Allah sent one angel to bring one chapter of it. So each chapter was to be carried by one angel. Each surah was to be carried by one angel, but they could not do it. So then Allah said, okay, one angel to pick one letter of the book. And this is, look at it at the context of when Allah says that if I would have revealed this Quran on the mountains, they would have been broken into pieces. Actually, they would have become dust. That's the khashiyah of Allah. So the angels, they were not able to lift even a letter. So then Allah, through His kindness and mercy, He reduced the weight of the book, and for the Musa alayhi salam, he was able to pick up and hold all the chapters all together. And then he brought it to his people and reminded them that it's Allah who created them, provided for them, and He helped them and saved them from Pharaoh. And upon which they asked Hazrat Musa alayhi salam to seek Allah's guidance so that they spend their life according to that guidance. It is the reply or acceptance of that prayer that Allah has sent upon them this book, the Torah. However, as history stays witness to it, they kept on transgressing from it. Allah kept on sending messengers after the Musa alayhi salam to keep reviving the message, to keep telling them, but they continuously kept on rejecting them. Some, they called imposters, and you are just plain liars, Allah did not send anything. Allah did not send anything. And the others, they simply killed. Like they killed Hazrat Zakaria, Hazrat Yahya, they killed John the Baptist. Just to name a few. Then Hazrat Isa alayhi salam, Jesus, He came to these people as a blessing so that they stop following the mysterious path that they had been following and correct their course. Come into the light of guidance. Now, Isa, Jesus, or Isa, actually the real, is a Hebrew word that means blessing or salvation. So the Isa, He brought salvation for His people in the form that through repenting, they get freed from their sins and get freed from the hellfire on the day of the judgment. He brought clear signs so that there be no doubt in the hearts and minds of the people that the message and messenger are indeed from Allah. The greatest sign that Hazrat Isa alayhi salam brought was that his very birth was unusual. It was a miracle. He was born to a chaste woman without any father. A woman who was dedicated to life of isolation and worshipping Allah. He was amongst the custodians of the temple of Solomon. The Maryam is also a Hebrew word that means blessed or obedient. And Hazrat Maryam alayhi salam, she was devoted to the care of the temple of Solomon by her mother. She grew up under the tutelage of her uncle Hazrat Zakaria alayhi salam. In her chastity and piety was known to all in the Jerusalem. They knew that she is provided food by Allah in a miraculous way. He was provided the fruits that were out of season. All the Jew priests knew, yeah, they knew about her chastity. But when she bore Hazrat Isa alayhi salam, instead of realizing that Allah has sent a great miracle towards them, the Israelites started accusing Hazrat Maryam alayhi salam of holding an unchaste character. The second miracle that Allah gave to Hazrat Isa alayhi salam, one can argue that, okay, it was so unusual that it was hard for human minds to conceive that a child can be born to a woman without a father. So to clear that, Hazrat Isa alayhi salam, the second miracle, he spoke when he was an infant, a few days old. He spoke to them, he told them, he cleared the name of his mother, and he declared that he is born to her and that he is the messenger of Allah. So that was the second clear sign to clear every doubt about it. So now there was no question about it. Okay. The first miracle you can have a doubt about being a human, but the second, when you hear a few days old baby talk about it, then you know it's something that is from Allah. It is not something that happens as a usual course of life. The Israelites, however, they were not moved by any of these open signs. Hazrat Isa alayhi salam grew up and he started calling people towards Allah. But then there was again this thing that when he was growing up as a child, then the Jews, they took of him as the promised Messiah. But as soon as he started correcting them and telling them that Allah did not order this, Allah did not say that, this is what Allah said and this is what Allah did not, those very priests, they turned against him and then they started calling all sorts of different things. So Hazrat Isa alayhi salam, he started presenting them with the signs of Allah so that they listened to him and heed to the message that he had brought. He created birds of clay, used glue in it, and the bird would fly with the order of Allah, like any normal bird. He asked them to bring to him those who were born blind. He will blow on them and they will have their eyesight fixed and everything correct. They will be able to see everything. He told them to bring to him their lepers, those who were suffering from psoriasis. He will blow on them and their conditions will cure. He told them that he will command to the dead by the order of Allah and the dead will start walking. And there were a number of dead people who became alive through this miracle. They lived long enough, married, they had children, and they died after living a normal life. He told them that he will tell them what they ate for their meal and what belongings do they have in their homes without even going in there. So Allah is saying that I gave all these signs to Hazrat Isa alayhi salam so that the Israelites believe in him and listen to him. So there was not one miracle. He kept on showing them one after another not because he wanted them to call him the son of Allah, na'udzubillah, but because he wanted them to listen to his message. So they believe really that he is sent by Allah for them. Messengers are always sent by Allah for the people to correct. And Allah is explaining in this verse the reason for their transgressions. Allah is telling us that they did all those wrongs because they were blinded with their worldly desires. Allah is telling that the Israelites, they rejected Allah's prophets, his messengers, and killed them because they were followers of their own selfish desires. They used to submit to the messengers and prophets of Allah out of fear. Like when they said that we are not going to listen or abide by the Torah, Jibreel alayhi salam, he lifted the Mount Sinai over the top of their heads, and then they went into the prostration, the sajda. And they went with their one eye open to say, okay, is the mountain coming on us or not? So, and then say, okay, we submit, we submit. But once the mountain came back, they said, no, we are not. Then up goes the mountain again, and down went they again, and the whole thing got repeated once more. So it was the fear. They used to submit to their prophets and messengers and the word of Allah when they found that they have no other option. When they did not find any other way to get what they want, except for submitting to Allah, then they used to submit. But as soon as that time is gone, there are new desires, there are new requirements, it's a modern era, they reverted back. And because they did not have true nisbat and unconditional love with their prophets, Shaitan and their own selfish desires, they kept on turning their hearts into darkness. This darkness had covered their eyes, their ears. They saw but could not see, they heard but could not hear. The companions of Rasulullah on the contrary, they were pure from these diseases or this disease. It never even occurred to them to disobey Allah and His Messenger. Such was their obedience to Rasulullah that whenever asked about a matter, even if it was in a plain daylight right in front of them, they would always say, Allah and His Messenger know better. So much so that Rasulullah once he took two sticks and he put them on the ground, one closer and the other little farther. And he asked his companions, what are these? And everybody could see that there are two sticks, they are pegged on the ground. But nobody said that. They said Allah and His Messenger know that. This was their obedience. They knew from the bottom of their heart is that they don't see what Allah and His Messenger see. They don't hear what Allah and His Messenger hears. And they don't know what Allah and His Messenger knows. The only reason for their obedience, for this discipline, was because they had Nisbat-e-Rasooli, and this Nisbat kept their hearts and minds clear from following the desires of Shaitan and their own self. They were Muslims, they had surrendered their will to Allah and His Messenger. And this is why they stayed on the right path and avoided falling into the same pitfalls as the Israelites. And it was this unconditional and pure love to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this nisbat, that the only desire that the Sahaba had was to make Allah and His Messenger sallam happy with them. On the day of Uhud, when the Muslims gathered after a setback, almost all the warriors were injured. Even Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself was injured and bleeding. And they were all in a bad shape. And just when the enemy left the battlefield and battleground, and people just sat on the ground wherever they can to relax for a moment before they even come back to Medina. And Uhud is not far from Medina, maybe a mile, mile and a half. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he commanded them to gather up and follow the kuffar so the enemy does not think of coming back and finishing them up. So imagine that after a hard-fought battle, which at one point you had almost lost, so many of you got killed and you are wounded, and you just still sat down to take a breath, and you are ordered to gather up and follow the enemy. Not one single person objected to the command of Rasulullah. As soon as they heard his orders, his command, they stood up and they started marching towards the enemy. Similarly, when the time of Tabuk came, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he ordered to start making preparations to meet the Romans. And it was a time of high heat. And all of us know how hot it can be in a desert. It was a time of high heat, the harvest, time of harvest, because Medina was an agricultural community and their signature crop was the date. They used to harvest, it was a time to harvest the date and gather up their everything, the ration up for the whole year. That was their peak season. It was their, like you have the Christmas season here. It was that time. It was hot, it was harvest, time for the harvest, and they were asked to meet one of the great powers of the time, the Romans. However, not a single person suggested to Rasulullah sallallahu to postpone the preparations for a few months so they can gather their harvest and provide for their children and their women folk and for their families for the next year to come. It would have, right? Not a single person said that. All but 3 people who settled back to it and started marching towards the Romans. And as I said earlier, it was a time of high heat, and there came a time when they ran short of the rations. So much so that Umar said that there was one date for 10 people. The rationing was one date for 10 people, and the way they did it, one person would take the date in his mouth, suckle on it for a little while, and then take it out and give it to the next. Who would suckle on it for a little while and then give it to the next, up until that by the time it reached the 10th person or whoever, whatever the number was, it was just ready. And that was their meal for the whole day. There was no water for them to drink, so they used to slaughter the camels and drink the water from their stomachs. Such was the hardship. And they suffered all these, but not like the Israelites when they told Hazrat Musa alayhi salam that you and thy Lord go and fight. We are sitting here. Because all that the Sahaba wanted was to make Allah and His Messenger ﷺ happy with them. And the only reason they wanted that and they were like that, because they had that pure and unconditional love to Rasulullah ﷺ, all Nisbat-e-Rasooli. My dear respected audience, the only reason to narrate all this to you and to remind each and every one of us is that there are two sections of people. One were the true fans and followers of Rasulullah ﷺ, and others were the followers of Hazrat Musa alayhi salam and Hazrat Isa alayhi salam. Allah is mentioning them to help us distinguish between them. And the distinction between the two groups is because Israelites, they used to pray, they used to do other acts of worship, but they did it like a machine. It was not out of love. It was practice, like most of us, we do salat. It's just a practice. We're just doing some exercise. Don't feel that love, that connection. We don't know why it's really are doing it. What's the purpose behind it? They did not have the bond that Nisbat with their prophets and messengers. And in the absence of that, all their ibadah, all their prayers was just a routine, just a facade. On the contrary, the companions of Rasulullah, they did all the acts of worship out of sheer love they had for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Everybody knows the incident of turning from Baitul Maqdis to Kaaba. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was leading a prayer. The order came. He turned, went through all the lines behind him to the other side. So it is a completely opposite side. So, for example, he was praying towards the east. The order came. He turned back, went through all the lower rows, stood on the left, on the west, and started praying. And all the Sahaba, they turned towards him. It did not. And those were the ones who were there. Then there was another masjid, because Medina at that time it had smaller pockets of population around it. It was not one big city like we have the concept of city today or in Japan. It was very fragmented city. So in another part of Medina, people were praying, and a Sahabi he passed by and he said, "Oh people, Allah has changed the Qibla from Baitul Maqdis to Kaaba." And those people immediately switched. They did not even wait to finish their salah and confirm the Qibla and do it. They switched as well. So such was the obedience of the Sahaba. It never occurred to them to ask why. Whenever they used to hear any command of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the only thing that came to their mind ever was, okay, how can I best perform this act? The sole focus of their life was to love and follow Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this unconditional love with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that is what made them like Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the sense that whatever Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam commanded, it became their desire. Same is the case today, that whoever wants to be liberated from the agony, the troubles of this world, that person must establish a true nisbat with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a true love with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The fact of the matter is that sorrow and fear, they don't exist actually. These things are for those who do not realize the reality of this life and that of this world. Those who realize the reality of this life and this world, they know that it's a very quick and fast journey. And the real life, it has yet to come. And the time that we are here in this life is only to make preparations for it. We are here just for the amount of time that imagine you undergoing a long journey going back to Pakistan or wherever, 40, 30 hours long journey. How much time do you take? Does it take for you to prepare for it? Maybe 2, 3 hours to pack stuff and everything, make sure that you have everything you need. So that's the 2, 3 hours time that we have here. The journey has yet to come. And that's why the fear and sorrow in this life, it does not even exist because it does not matter. No matter what it is going to pass very quickly. And the people who know it, they know that the real sorrow and fear is that of being on the losing side on the day of judgment. When every soul will fear for only him or herself. Everybody will be on his or her own at that day. Except for those who feared Allah, who were muttaqeen. Allah says in the Quran that nobody will be friend of anybody but those who are muttaqeen. They know that the only success is that on that day of judgment, they be on the right path, on the right side, on the winning side. And that is the only thing that is worth striving for. They know that Rasulullah ﷺ has said that on the day of judgment, when Allah will show Himself to the creation, those with the Rasulullah ﷺ, they will fall into prostration, into sujood. And by that time, they will pick up their heads from the sajda. The whole day of judgment would have passed. The day that is 50,000 years long would have passed in just one sajda. That is how easy Allah made it. So it is this nisbat, this bond with Rasulullah, this obedience, that is the purpose for us coming over here, gathering over here. Let me, let me take a little time to explain my relation with you all as well. Because it's a reminder for me and you, so that we all know exactly why we are here. I was back in Pakistan, as many of you know. I just came on Thursday night. And of course, before I coming back home, I went to see my teacher 2, 3 times. But when I was coming, went to see him the last time, he reminded me again of her. And when I went back in 2011, I went to Pakistan after 6 years. And one of the purposes of my visit was to start check the feasibility of coming back to Pakistan and settling back there. The kids were growing up, it was all good, they needed to be, I wanted them to be raised in an Islamic environment and everything. Normal thought that all us had. And I went to meet him, stayed there for 3 days, it was worse. The last day, I went to meet him before coming back. And in that last meeting, he asked me, he said, go back to US, go back to America and make sure that zikr of Allah can be heard in all corners. And in that moment, I gave up on my dreams, all my plans, everything. I just came back and I said, okay, this is what I am going to do for the rest of my life. So I'm not a multi profession. I was not trained. I did not go to madrasa. I am a very illiterate person. All I know is what I am taught. It was not my profession. It still is not my profession. Allah saved me from making it my profession. But that is how it all started for me. And this time he again narrated me the story. Our grand teacher has been Zia Masaram. One person came to meet him and he asked him, okay, where are you based from? Who is your teacher? Which are you a part of? He said, it's a strange story of how did I happen to be there. He said, I went to the school, Darul Uloom, and remember, this is like early 20th century, early 20th century, long time ago, about 100 or so years ago. And he said, I got graduated from there, and the tradition was that when you graduate, they give you a gown and put a turban on your head, making sure, and that was their graduation dress. So he said, I got graduated, I was coming back home, and I got off of the bus, and I was walking, and then there was this guy, he was herding goat. He saw me, he came rushing towards me, he grabbed me by the hand, he said, okay, take my bath, make me your disciple. And he said, I told him, I am not one of those. The person thought that maybe he is being polite, he is being humble. So he kept on insisting. He said, I told him, look, I am from a completely different line of business, line of thought. This is not what we do. I am wearing this because that's my graduation dress. He was a poor goat herder. He did not let go of it. And those of you who have experienced those village folks, once something stuck in their mind, it is stuck there. So could not find, he said, I could not find any way out. So I just took him and I have heard about it, what people do. So I just imitated what I'm doing it. I told him that, okay, this is the zikr, you do that, and I walked it. Thing went, life went by, and instead, then sometime later, I fell sick, went into the coma. People thought I'm dead. They bathed me, wrapped me up in the shroud, put me on the bed to be taken and to be buried. And he said, at that time, I saw that I am in lying somewhere, it's complete darkness. I'm getting frightened with it. Then when I looked deep hard enough, I thought there was one ray of light coming from somewhere. And there is a very like little murmur coming with it. No sound. He said that when I focused on it, it was that goat herder doing that zikr of Allah that I taught him out of joke just to get myself out of the situation. And he said, when I woke up, came back to my senses of, then I thought, all my ibadah that I did, all the knowledge that I had, whatever charity I gave, it all came to nothing. The only thing that brought peace and light to me in that moment of darkness was the zikr that goat herder was doing. The story of his zikr. So he said, then I started looking for a spiritual teacher, and then I went and I started following this path. So that's what my teacher told me. Remind me. So the only return I expect from all of you is that when I am dead, my grave is lit because of you. That's all I can ask for it. That's all that my vested interest in you. Because that's why I ask. I don't want any of you to go back because that my I don't want your dollar. I don't want your money. Alhamdulillah. All I want is that okay, you are my peace when I need it. You're my ticket to life. And that's what my relation with you is. That's the vested interest I have in each and every one of you. And may Allah keep it well until I pass. So the reason to tell you all this is that the real success of all of us in both this world and in hereafter is that we establish Nisbat-e-Rasooli, that we establish that pure, unconditional, maddening love with Rasulullah that Sahaba had. We do not do anything that Rasulullah would not want us to do. We do not do anything that Rasulullah did not do. We live this life to be like him. That is what Nisbat-e-Rasooli is. And this nisbat, once you have that, once you love Rasulullah, you try to be like him. Once you have that feeling, then this nisbat, it converts all fear into happiness, all agony into peace, all disease into cure. Nobody is forever. Hazrat Imran bin Hussain, he had, if I am to guess today, hepatitis attack. His belly was swollen, so he could not sit up. He was bedridden for 30 years. 30 years he was bedridden. Could not walk, could not do anything. Eat, bathe, everything was on the bed. And one person came to see him and he said, "Aren't you tired? How are you coping with it?" And he said, I'll tell you, but don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody till I am dead. And he said, okay. He said, because of this condition, because I am showing patience, sabr on it, Allah has made it so that the angels come and they say salam to me in my bed. I see them. They visit. So this was his reward for going through that disease for 30 years, not complaining about it, having sabr. So when you have pure Nisbat-e-Rasooli, then everything turns out good for you. Nothing bad happens. But it's such a precious thing. Like it cures all the ailments, physical and spiritual for us. And every precious thing can only be kept in a clean place. Nobody puts their valuables in a dirty place. And the place to be kept for the Rasooli to be kept is the clean heart, and the hearts can only be cleansed by the remembrance of Allah, which is the sole purpose for us gathering here, so that we all gather together, we all remember Allah, call upon Allah, plead to Him through His names, through His words,
so that Allah cleanses our heart and
makes them such that this rare and precious commodity called Nisbat-e-Rasooli be kept in them. And all our worries, troubles, and ills be put into the hands of Allah. So with this intention and this focus and this desire, let's all start. For those of you who are here for the first time, the way it goes is that I say a kalima, a surah, or call upon the name of Allah. And up until the next one is said, you keep repeating it in your heart. Try to focus on the meaning. So let's start. Say Bismillah Rahman Rahim.